Good evening, Norbert. It's a pleasure to have you here.
The pleasure is mine.
Thank you for volunteering to appear in our channel. As you are aware, some 2 years ago, the first digital national identity was introduced in Greece, and just recently, the personal number. That's how they call a unique identification number, which is gradually will be replacing VAT, national social security number, and so on and so forth. So those two things combined together end up in some digital means for granting or not granting access to services, first public services and soon enough private services as well. So we're certainly concerned, deeply concerned. What we would like to know at first is what is the current situation in Germany? How similar or different is it to Greece?
Yes, I can try. Luckily, we haven't gone as far in Germany so far, but we're certainly on the way. What they've done is they made a tax identification number into a number that's can be used for your dealings with the government in different ways, but that's still voluntary, and so far it's not a very significant thing yet. But we are awaiting the European Digital Identity Wallet, which is to be rolled out in all the EU countries. It's supposed to be voluntary at the start, but we all know how that works. It's always, it starts voluntary, and then you need it for more and more things. And like just in Austria, it's been reported they have something similar already, that you need it for registering for childcare services and things like that. And that will happen certainly, that it's becoming more and more inconvenient to do anything without that digital identity, and eventually it will be required. That is very certain.
Thank you for sharing this with us. China, how close do you think we are in Europe or Germany per se in having such a similar social score system applied?
Yeah, as far as I know, there is no one system of a social credit score in China even. I think some of that has been misreported, but it is certainly, there are certainly elements of that, and there are different systems in different cities or provinces in China. But it also doesn't matter if you have that formal system where you get such and so many points subtracted if you do something bad, and you get extra 7 points for doing this. It doesn't have to be so precise, and it actually works even better if it isn't so precise, because when you're policing, everybody's policing themselves more if they don't exactly know what it means if you're caught doing certain things. The important thing is that everybody feels watched, everybody understands that information is collected about them, and somebody in power is judging it, and you get advantages and disadvantages from that. And that's certainly what's happening, where they're going. There's things like people can't speak publicly because they're considered bad people with bad opinions. And there's shitstorms against those who let them speak, so that they cancel. The so-called cancel culture, that is one element of the social credit system. If you say too many of the wrong things, they shut you down. There's many different things like that. You might have your bank account canceled. We have that a lot for.
Oh, you had that as well?
Oh yeah, a lot. We have hardly any independent publisher or blogger or someone who's like who has a lot of followers and who's critical of the government. They all have their bank accounts canceled. I didn't, because I'm not commercial. I'm not collecting money, so I don't have a problem with that. But everybody else like me had their bank accounts canceled. These are the things that happen if you. And so people understand that happens, and then they are careful and they're mincing their words, and they don't say certain things because they don't want their bank account canceled and other things. So we are very close already in that respect, because it's a very gradual thing, and we already have a lot of elements of that.
Absolutely. You're completely right. I mean, despite the fact we don't have a well-defined social credit score system with rules, with do's and don'ts, with different scenarios, in practice, citizens are penalized for their choices, and more especially the choices that seem to annoy the government and the decisions they are taking without asking their people. And you're right. The situation in China has slightly been misinterpreted, but not its essence. That's because, yes, the social credit score system is not applied to China as a whole at this stage, and it's a province, they're doing their own thing. Some of them are doing nothing. But the system is up and running in certain provinces. It's a real life example. It's not fiction. So obviously we would like to avoid not only being applied in the entire of China, but applied in Germany, Greece, indeed Europe, or the entire world. Let me change slightly the conversation. In moving forwards, I know you're writing a new book entitled The Truth of Complex, where you're indicating very strongly the way the freedom of speech is being suppressed, and therefore, with technology being weaponized, it results into less and less democracy. Can you please tell us a few things, give us some hints about your new book?
Yeah, it's gonna come out in May, and it's called, translated, The Truth Complex, which is about all the fact checkers and other organizations that are determining what's to be considered the truth and what is fake news or disinformation. This is a very large complex of so-called non-government organizations, which are basically all totally dependent on government money and government direction. And they do for the government what the government in a liberal democracy is not allowed to do. Government is not allowed to censor speech and suppress speech that it doesn't like, but these organizations do that. They can tell the social media platforms what to shadow ban or what to cancel altogether, what to erase. They can they even search the internet with very elaborate tools for anything that could be considered illegal, like hate speech or something, which is a very ill-defined concept. And then you get your house searched early in the morning, just you made a nasty comment about a politician. So we had that happening a lot. And that's basically the same agenda. It's about control. It's about making people afraid that we're being watched, and making them refrain from criticizing the government. It's actually, the digital ID actually starts going in there too, because we're very invested now in in introducing rules that force you to become identifiable before you talk on the internet, because before you put up a video, you can't do it anonymously anymore. You have to use your digital ID. That's the idea. They're trying to introduce this under the pretext of protecting the youth against pornography or against too much social media. And as a side effect, which I think is mostly the intended effect, they want to make everybody identifiable so they can better collect information about them automatically. They can pull everything together that they what they say on any website or in any venue, and that's basically the same, another aspect of the same program, controlling everything what's going on and everybody.
I'm definitely looking forward to your book. Will it be in German, or are you going to translate it in English?
I very much hope that there will be a publisher who takes it on them to publish it in English, since there is quite some political interest in the subject now, with the Trump administration fighting with the Europeans over censorship. So they should be interested in it. And I think there hasn't been anything that explains how this complex is being set up, and the military background of it. Like it's very much tied to the propaganda war with Russia that started in 2014 in earnest with events in Ukraine. And I can show a lot of connections to the military, and they are actually very involved in wherever you look, you find connections to the military.
That's a very interesting aspect. So looking forward to your book. And I mean, with the Digital Services Act and also the chat control that came very near very close to voting, I'm sure they will get back to it in the future. So I couldn't actually resist, and you can probably see this question coming. What about the abolition of cash? How far have we progressed in this direction since your book on the abolition of cash and our interview a few years ago?
Yeah, it's continuing gradually, but always in the same direction until very recently. Like in the Netherlands, there's many stores, even important stores like pharmacies and things like that, where you have a large percentage where they don't accept cash. So you go to a pharmacy, old person without credit card goes to a pharmacy, can't buy anything because they don't accept cash. It's happening a lot in many countries. They have gone very far in the Nordic countries, where in many ways of life you can't use cash anymore, but they're sort of turning around there, mostly because of being afraid of war and other catastrophes. They've realized that cash is much more resilient as a system because it works even if there's no electricity. So they're starting to turn around a little bit from a very low level. But in Germany so far, there people like cash a lot, or many people do. We have gone a lot less far, but it's still being pushed back and going toward cashlessness. There's more and more stores and restaurants that won't accept cash. Things like that. Many government offices where citizens go to have their ID cards issued or things like that, it's become very common that they don't accept cash anymore, which is very significant because it's basically government money, euro banknotes, even though it's the EU in this case. So the government doesn't accept their own money anymore. That is a very significant thing. And in public transportation, that's also being used quite systematically to push back cash, because you are if you can't pay with cash for going on the bus or on the subway, you are forced to use cards, and it also gives a lot of information on where you're moving around and things like that. So that is happening a whole lot in Germany too, that you can't pay cash anymore. Far not as advanced as in Greece, where I understand you have rules that you have to spend a certain amount of your income electronically in a digital way. We don't have things like that, but I think that has to do that Greece got under the thumb of the EU and the Troika during the crisis, and they pushed a lot of these things through, and that's still going further.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like the guinea pig of Europe in the way things have been applied to Greece. I think in Greece we do the opposite. We pay for everything with card. You buy a cup of coffee from the cafeteria just down the road to take in your car, and people just use some electronic means of payment. I remember your advice some years ago on what can we do to prevent the abolition of cash. And your answer is use cash as much as possible. And that is a very good way of resisting.
Mm-hmm. Now, going after people who do that, though, I just had a talk with somebody who had their bank account canceled because the person was withdrawing too much cash, and that was only 30,000 in a year. Had some things that he was paying in cash, so that's like 2,500 a month, and had their bank account canceled. So it's very insidious what's going on. It's hard. It gets harder to resist.
That's incredible. Is the bank covered legally, or does the government just allow them to do whatever they want?
They do whatever they want. It's called freedom of business, freedom of contract, and they make a contract with you. And if it says it can be cancelled without giving a reason, then they can do it. And they never give a reason, because then they could be sued for discrimination or something. But if they don't give a reason, you can't do anything. And I think often the government is behind it. The authority that oversees the bank is pushing the banks very hard to give a lot of notices of suspicious activities. So they give a lot of notices. They keep the enforcers very busy, so that they can't even pursue real crime. They have to go after this little nonsense about cash use, and then they give all these notices, and then the criminal office might ask the bank to give more information, and then the bank says, "Oops, there's a problem. Let's cancel that account. We don't want a problem." That is what happens a lot, for nothing, just because there is a suspicion and the police starts looking into it, and you have your account canceled just for using cash, just because you're a cash lover. I even hesitate to report on it. I do report on it, but it makes me feel bad, because it's part of a strategy. They want to make people afraid. They want to make them afraid to use cash. So I hate to make people afraid, because I know they like that.
That's incredible. So it looks like we are even surpassing China on the way that the society is evolving, and the governments and the banks are abusing their power to do whatever they like.
I think it's hard to surpass China, but we're certainly going in the direction, yeah.
Okay, so in closing, I'm going to make a probably more difficult question. How do you think, given the fact, for instance, in Greece, we have an electronic ID now, there is this so-called personal number, everything is being digitized in a way that technology does not serve democracy, but the state serves the technology, so it's the other way around. So how do you think we can still avoid this, or how can we react in practice?
Well, there's, for the reasons I've just explained, it's very hard to do something individually because they can always go after you. It has to be political. There has to be an understanding that there is a problem, which is what you and I are working on, and which is the first most important thing, because you can't change things if most people think everything's okay, the system has flaws, but it's basically right, and politicians are not doing anything against you. They might do things wrong, but they're doing their best and the system is good. If people think that, they're not going to make radical changes, but there are radical changes needed. Because these things are really coming from some powerful forces that are using politics to push it through, and they're quite radical. I mean, it's a total control agenda that's being pushed, so it needs some radical counter movement. But we have to be patient. We have to inform people, and people do start to understand they're losing trust, and that is important. I mean, part of why the governments are starting to be so aggressive against critics is because they feel like they're losing trust, and
Absolutely.
it just has to happen more. And if people understand more and more people understand, the chances increase that there will be a serious pushback. But we have to be patient and just grind the stone until it's through.
So with this positive message, I would like to thank you, Norbert, once again for willing to join our conference through video, and certainly this entire interview, which is going to be extremely helpful.
Thank you for having me, Dimitrios. It was a pleasure, as always.
Always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Dr. Norbert Hering.